Armageddon presents The Daily. My thoughts on prophecy, on the books of Daniel and Revelation. Hello. So this is our third part of our series of presentations on the four of prophecy. So let me get myself out of the way and bring up the slides. So recall our findings from previous presentations. So we had the four of Daniel 2. We see because of the structuring of Daniel 2 that it sets the statue of four metals against, in opposition to Daniel and his three friends. Or in other words, the stone. In Daniel 3, we see that 3 become 4, as in the three friends of Daniel. When thrown into the fiery furnace, they're joined by the Son of God to become 4. But there is more. So, there are 4 winds of the heaven, there are 4 heads, and there are 4 horns. And these are all in Daniel 7, 8, and 11. What they show you is that this 4 actually comes down to the 4 directions. So of course we have the 4 winds, that's in Daniel 7. Then we have the 4 heads of the leopard. Then in 8 we have the 4 horns toward the 4 winds of heaven. And finally in 11 we have the 4 winds. Now, according to Daniel 8, the context of this all is the sanctuary. That's Daniel 8, 11, 13, and 14. Now, why is the sanctuary important? Because the Bible actually gives the sanctuary in the context of the 4 directions. We see that in the wilderness camp of Israel and its 4 standards. So, about the sanctuary, there were 4 camps in the wilderness wanderings. We have the camp to the east, the camp of Judah. This is symbolized according to Jewish tradition by a lion. Then we had to the south, the camp of Reuben, symbolized by the head of a man. To the west, we had the camp of Ephraim, symbolized by a bull. And to the north, we had the camp of Dan, symbolized by an eagle. So it's interesting to point out that 3 of these animals are earthly and 1 is heavenly, the eagle. So if we go on in Daniel 8, we see the rise of the little horn. It attacks the east, the south, and the pleasant land. But all this is, again, is the 4 directions. So specifically, the little horn is the king of the north. We see that king of north come out in Daniel 11. He's specifically called the king of the north. Historically, this king of the north is Rome, thus the Roman eagle. Now there's another attack on the north, counterfeit north. When we read about Lucifer in Isaiah 14, Lucifer says, I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. Isaiah 14:13. According to Psalms 48:2, the mount of the congregation is Mount Zion on the sides of the north, the city of the great king. The sides of the north is the location of the temple, as you can see from this diagram of the city of Jerusalem. Alright, so we have the 4 again, but in this case it's the 4 Gospels. We have the same sort of 3-to-1 division in the 4. Just as we had 3 earthly creatures and 1 heavenly, so we have the 3 synoptic Gospels, and then the Gospel of John. Once again, we have this same 3-to-1 division in the 4 living creatures of Revelation 4:7. The lion, the calf, the man, the 3 earthlies, and then the eagle, the heavenly. What makes this really interesting is the fact that the New Testament is designed it forms a structure in which the four Gospels, Matthew through John, they align with the four living creatures of Revelation 4:7. As you can see, the Acts of the Apostles, the Acts of the Holy Spirit, is paired with the seven spirits of God of Revelation 4:5. You have the seven churches of Paul: Rome, Corinth, Ephesus, Galatia, Colossae, Philippi, and Thessalonica. And then we have the seven churches of Asia: Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. Then we have in Hebrews 4 and Revelation 1:10 through 20, we have a picture of Christ as our high priest. We also have the Word being mentioned, and also the Sabbath. Then in 2 Peter 1, we have prophecy and the day star being mentioned in the context of prophecy. That prophecy shines as a light into our hearts until the day star rises there. And then the book of prophecy, the revelation, is called the revelation of Jesus Christ, a revealing of Jesus Christ. And finally, we have the false prophets, a similar description of them being mentioned in 2 Peter 2:3 and Jude. And at the center we have 3 times John, or 1st through 3rd John. So if we combine all the stuff we just looked at together, what we find is that Daniel is giving us a picture of Antichrist. Christ has 4 natures. These natures are given to us in the 4 Gospels. So we have Christ as King, that's associated with Matthew. Christ as man, that's associated with Luke. Christ as sacrifice servant, that's associated with Mark. And Christ as God, that's associated with John. So just as Christ has 4 characteristics symbolized by these creatures, so the Antichrist has 4 creatures associated with it: the lion, the bear, the leopard, and the nondescript beast. And as the eagle represents God, so the 4th beast, the nondescript beast, attacks God. Great words against the Most High. In both cases, the lion represents kingdom. But that Antichrist thing doesn't stop there, because we have the he-goat with 4 horns. And another study will show that the he-goat is actually a symbol of Satan. So Satan here is pictured as being Antichrist, having 4 sides to him, just like Christ. So in the end, we have 4 against 4. We have the Antichrist with his 4 characteristics, or 4 animal characteristics, and he's in opposition to Christ with his 4 sides, but then also with Daniel and his 3 friends, his bride and army. And both of these, Christ and Daniel and his 3 friends, they are pictured by the stone. A stone which is God's kingdom, right? And the kingdom, of course, has a king, Christ, and then it has the subjects, or the bride, which is Daniel and his 3 friends. So you're probably wondering why would Christ have someone associated with him? Or is there proof that this is the case, that there is this association between Christ and Daniel and his 3 friends? Well, if we look at Genesis, we know that the prophecy of Christ is given there, the seed that will come and crush the serpent's head, but there's a similar prophecy given for God's people. So in Genesis 3:16 it says, "And I will put enmity between thee, the serpent, and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel." Genesis 3:16. But in Romans 16:20 we read, "And the God of peace shall bruise Satan under your feet shortly." Very similar pictures. Well, to be continued. I hope and pray that this was a useful study for you. Please like and subscribe and share it with others. Thank you, and until next time, bye.